The Opium War, 1976. The story begins in India, a country where Brian spent his early years. His father, Sir Claude Inglis, was a well-regarded hydraulic engineer stationed in Pune and other areas. Inglis Sr. never regarded or treated Irish Catholics or Indians as inferiors. Opium grown under conditions of great horror was harvested, packed and shipped to China with twofold aims: to maximize the flow of revenue to British coffers, and to ensure as much plausible deniability as possible for the Crown. Imagine Inglis as a prosecutor building a case against the British establishment. Inglis's excoriation of this opium policy is warranted, yet a listener may wish to call for a cross-examination. What exactly was the author's own agenda in this matter? Brian's treatment of capitalism and foreign trade is bleak and Dickensian. This is a world of chimney sweeps and child labour, of landlordism and rack-renting, of official rapacity and corruption. Missing from Inglis's account is any sense of the self-correcting capacity of British-style capitalism and the powerful impulses for reform it could and did engender. One thinks of the Quakers and abolitionism. Likewise absent from the Opium War are any references to the many wonderful advances in science and technology in the 1700s and 1800s, which made human life so much better and more bearable. Clean water, communications, and electricity, to name a few. In fact, the reference to electricity provides us with an important clue to Inglis's motivations. Inglis had no time for the Victorian pioneers of science and technology, such as Michael Faraday, because they were too closely identified with efforts to suppress and ridicule Victorian spiritualism, a topic dear to Brian's heart, and covered in exhaustive detail in Natural and Supernatural, and its sequel Science and Parascience. Inglis viewed the paranormal as the single most important underreported story of his own time. His investigations into psi-forces earned him mockery from contemporary skeptics, and he fought fire with fire, shaming his critics in the process. For Inglis, those Victorian rationalists who had mocked the occult, Faraday and Darwin among them, were cut from the same cloth as the Whitehall mandarins who rationalized imperial foreign policy. Watch out for Brian's use of the word suspect in describing both types of men, a classic Inglicism, denoting reprehensible behaviour. If one returns to the Opium War, one might argue that the British expedition to punish the Chinese authorities was an empire's predictable response to a perceived affront. The real surprise would be if London had done nothing. The British action may not have been pretty, it may not have been ethical, decent, or wise, but it was in keeping with the behaviour of imperial armies throughout history. The saga of the Chinese opium racket and its tragic outcome represented a case study in commodity trade and frontier economics in an era of limited communications and obsessive official secrecy. This was the kind of case study, unflattering to Great Britain, that was calculated to appeal to a left-leaning economics lecturer in Ireland in the immediate post-war era, and Brian was employed in such a capacity while studying for his PhD at Trinity College Dublin. In fairness, Brian was never a Marxist. He would have had patience for the modern-day practitioners of victimology, and he was always too good a scholar and too widely read to tolerate intellectual laziness. He would be the first to admit that the world in the century of his birth had changed irrevocably. For countries that once laboured under the imperial yoke, India, Ireland, and China, have put the past behind them and enjoyed massive booms. In this, Brian would have found much cause for optimism. Introduction. It has happened to me before, and I trust it will again, that the research for one book has lured me to write another. Preparing to investigate the history of drugs for The Forbidden Game, I happened to pick up the 1840 China papers dealing with the events leading up to the Opium War, which must surely be one of the most compulsively readable collections of documents ever published as a parliamentary blue book. From that, I went on to read some of the authors who have covered the same ground.